Okay, we're back. Now my camera is doing this thing where it has the recording time, but it's out of a certain number of minutes. I don't know if that's because that's all the room left on my phone. It is almost an hour that it's giving me, so hopefully I'll be done well before then, but you know, the mysteries of technology. Fine with the mysteries of otherworldly gods, it's the mysteries of technology that get me. So anyway. Tea break. Alright, I give in. It has to be water. So, anyway. Pardon me? So the next track is Witch of Anun. I saw the neighbor house turn on the light, so... But I don't think they can hear or see me, so I don't think they're bothered by me. But in any case... So, as I mentioned, this song is about the witch, Ordthi. I think that's more or less how you say her name. Orddu. And in Welsh, U is pronounced... I can't quite get the sound right, but it's much closer to E than U. So like in Gwyn ap Nudd, his patronymic is spelled in UDD, and then the double D is pronounced like the, or it's like in the sound the, but it's just the. Wonder how I'm going to write that in the CC captions, but I like to say it's that Neath, for example, rhymes with breathe, more or less. Neath as in Gwyn ap Nudd. So, anyway, the only thing we know about Ordthi in the Mabinogion is that they need her blood, so they go and kill her. And by they I mean King Arthur and his group. And I'm one of several devotees of Gwyn who have been called to examine and kind of live with Ordthi's story and like restore like heal her in a way, and listen to her side of the story, because it seems like she's, well, according to our shared gnosis, it seems like she and her ancestors may have been one of a group of Gwyn devotees, and there's a wonderful book by a friend and fellow devotee of Gwyn. The book is called Gatherer of Souls, and it's by Lorna Smithers, and I'll link that book and her blog down below. So, a lot of the gnosis that she received from Gwyn about Ordthi and other past devotees of his, just like telling their stories and like stories that had been lost and aren't anywhere in history or lore, so we can't prove they happened, obviously, but like part of being an the Awanid, at least to me, is listening to beings that most people no longer listen to or maybe even believe are real. So since I'm an Awanith of Gwyn, it seems to be really important to like listen to the stories he wants to tell about himself and his people, and what they've experienced. And I had this really strong sense of a mythic overlay, almost like I was living the story of Orthe, and I was her in a way. Not exactly, but like I was narratively equivalent, if that makes sense. And like my ex was Arthur. And I kept having this strong feeling of like it's not going to be the same this time. And I'm not saying that I was like I'm reincarnated from her or something. Like I do believe in reincarnation, but I don't have any sense that I was her at any point. But it just felt like I'm in a very similar place, like symbolic place almost. And once again, I'm a witch of Gwyn who's in a lot of danger, and I'm like I can't die by Arthur's sword this time. I have to get out, and I think that he, I'm sure Gwyn was very glad that I got out too. So, that song is about that experience, and that was the first time that I was able to admit to myself, even through multiple layers of myth and poetry, that I was being abused by this person that I had loved for a long time. And something I ask, the song basically ends with me asking Gwen, this is becoming a tragedy right now, and I need you to change this story, like change the ending, and show me that there's something else, like good things that can happen now. And he has, but like there's still some more work to do, because I'm not in a place that I really feel like I'm home, or I can really be myself. So yeah. The next track is The Lighthouse. When I would get readings from my friends online at the beginning of the pandemic, like we started this daily get together that we called Corvids and Cauldrons, and it's still going on, but not as regularly. But I made some really good friends through that, and just a bunch of fellow, mostly Celtic pagans, but not just that, and just a bunch of really awesome queer, trans, pagan, anti-capitalist people who also, like, many of them are disabled or like understand that struggle. Many of them are neurodivergent, and all of us are like working on being anti-racist, and just like it's just a really good group of people, and many of them are my chosen family. And so for a while we had this thing where we would do tarot readings on a certain day of the week, and I kept getting the Tower card. And you might think, oh well, 2020, it was a Tower year. The Tower card usually means like some major disaster is happening, or like it's the structures that make up your world are just about to crumble down. Oddly enough, when I first learned about the tower, I was still in a church that I knew was abusive. It was the church I was raised in, but I wasn't quite out because I was still dependent on my family, and they were still going there. But I was like, oh, that means... Like, I saw the tower as a beacon of hope, because it means that the structures of power are crumbling down, and if you're being abused by the structures of power, then that's amazing. It's like, yes, finally. So, it was a bit weird experiencing the tower how most people seem to experience it in this case, because I was seeing it as like, oh wait, something I don't want to fall down is crumbling down, but I wasn't quite sure what. I had this weird feeling something's not right in my marriage, my human marriage, but I just wasn't ready to... I wasn't quite sure what it was, and I wasn't ready to really admit it to myself. Like, I spent a long time trying to save my marriage. Like, I even often when I was really scared of how my ex would react, I would try to reach out and like have an honest conversation or like work on our relationship. So, I mean, no one can say I didn't give it my all. And I didn't have to do that. Like, I could have just left as soon as they treated me badly, but I didn't want to. It seemed like the worst thing ever to leave them. Like, I would have been heartbroken, but by the point I did leave, I was like, well, I am still sad, but like, my love for them has just slowly died because of how they've treated me, and I've just withdrawn because I'm scared and it hurts. And besides, now I have Gwen, so like, it's a lot easier to deal with losing one partner when you have another one who you actually love and who lights up your life. So, anyway, speaking of lighting up your life, this whole song is basically about turning the tower into a lighthouse, which basically represents my future with Gwen and my vocational path, wherever that takes me. I wasn't quite sure, but I was like, there's something here. One thing Gwen told me, that this was a slightly different metaphor, but similar idea. He showed me that there was a train coming, like a metaphorical train, and he said, you and I are going to get on it. Like, he was talking to me. They, meaning my ex, they can get on it or not. It's up to them, but you and I will be leaving on that train. And I was like, okay, yeah, because I'm committed to Gwen. I've taken vows to him. I want to be with him, and wherever he leads my life, I feel like that will be, like, besides my vows, I feel like that will just make me really happy and fulfilled. And if I have to end up leaving my ex to do that, well, that's a choice that they've made. I've offered them the chance to go with me on this journey. And I didn't mean that I would move across country and expect them to come with me. It was more like, wherever I am, I'm going to be on this journey with Gwen. But it turned out that they couldn't come with me because they were not treating me in a good way at all. So the train and the lighthouse are kind of similar symbols for me. There's a lot of train imagery, oddly enough. in my like internal healing process, it seems like. But not a lot of it comes into the album. This song was really difficult to write instrumental parts for, because I wanted it to sound like the ocean, kind of, but I was like not really sure what I was doing, and I ended up doing something really unusual, which for the verses I just played with my left hand for the first verse, and then like the second one I added some sustained notes. That's the word, with the right hand, but I wasn't playing the melody, and I usually do. So I was just singing the melody as I played the chords. It's cool that I'm able to do more stuff like that. Like it can be hard sometimes to keep the melody in mind and like sing it while you're also playing different notes and hearing different notes. It's a skill I developed while singing choir, so it's also useful here. And I realized while I was writing The Lighthouse, I get to consider myself worth loving and saving. So, I mean, that was a cool milestone too, because my ex had just worn me down so much without even me realizing it. I don't think I'm going to get through all of them, all the songs. But there were a couple more I wanted to touch on. This one and The Fairy King Took Me, which has become like the face of the album, because it sounds really haunting, which I didn't realize at first when I wrote it. I was like, wow, this is haunting. I didn't realize how beautiful this line is, the musical line that goes, "This life reborn, I'm barely getting started," and so on, until I started playing it on the piano and really saw the full potential of it. But I didn't really like the song at first because it just felt, I'm not really sure why, it just felt like blah and kind of just not, I was like, oh, it's not super deep. It's not like my other songs have all this beautiful metaphor and stuff. But I think I didn't like it because it talked directly about things that were really painful at the time. And I think that honesty is its strength, honestly, and I do really love it now. But it just tells about how even on outings, like during my life with my ex, where I was supposedly going on a date with them, or like I mentioned we went as a couple to our friend's wedding. It wasn't our wedding, like that could be confusing in the song, but we went to our friend's wedding, and I was there with them, but really I was there with Gwen, because he was the one that I was paying, like spending all of my emotional and mental energy on. And it's about to do the maximum file size warning, so I kind of want to wait to do this next part until after that. Just see what will happen. But anyway, it tells a few things about stuff that actually happened in this song. Like things my ex actually said and did, which it felt good to actually be honest about that. Like when I came back in after making my lifelong vows, and I was so happy. I finally, like, I could finally break my silence about what I had been doing, because Gwen asked me to kind of keep that vow of silence so it would just be my decision and I wouldn't be influenced by anyone else. And I totally understood why, because I knew there were people in my life that would try to influence me in ways I didn't want. But I wanted this to be my own responsibility and just decision when I made lifelong vows to him. So I came back in and I was just so happy. And my ex was like, oh, I'm generally not in favor of lifelong vows. Like, I hadn't asked them. It was something about my spirituality. But that was the only reason why I had a slight misgiving after that, because they had said that. But I don't actually regret doing that, and I never have. Okay, there's the maximum file size warning. Cool, now I can read the blurb. I really just wanted to say this out loud. Oddly enough, I didn't like this song when I first wrote it, probably because it talks about pain that feels ugly and glamourless. For a moment, I leave myth and metaphor behind and speak directly about the version of the story that happened in this world. It was actually a glowing compliment by a friend, hi Vivian, that made me reconsider this song's merit. And as soon as I started composing the piano part, I realized it captured my grief in such a profound and ethereal way. That haunting starkness is what made me choose this song as the album's signature track. I realized, despite my earlier misgivings, that this song was becoming the album's emotional heart. Maybe that's because, in the midst of my ex-husband's disdain and rage, you can watch Gwyn slowly write himself into the absent role of lover in my story. And through this song I can finally say, goodbye, Andy. I don't usually say the name, like their name, much less the nickname I used to call them all the time. And it was the name they went by. I'm not going to say their last name because I'm not about to dox them, but like, it feels really powerful to just say that, because they were such a huge part of my life for a long time. I tend to take on the histories and experiences of other people as part of my own, like, expanded universe, personal mythos, like they're the backstories of a character I'm close to. If I'm main character of my story, then like this is a different character who's also prominent. So when I did the title, when I designed the title of the album, I mentioned that the word not is in a different color, like you're not my Gwithyr. And that's partly, well, it's partly just because, you know, it's an intense, it shows the intense emotion, and it being stained with red is kind of like, yeah, I feel like my blood has been used to write this. But also, there's an anime that my ex loved. We actually met in the anime club at our school. The first time I went there, and I was in it for several years, but like the first time I went there, I met one of the officers. And we just we talked really late into the night. We just really connected. And that was my ex. But one of the animes they'd always loved, and which seemed to be formative for them, is one called Neon Genesis Evangelion. And I think one of the movies or something, I'm not too sure, but I think there's some title associated with the series where the title is "You Are (parentheses) Not Alone," so not is in parentheses, and this was partly a reference to that, the not being different in some way. And like, I have nothing against the series Evangelion, but it was important to me as a part of my ex's backstory and their formative experiences. So this is me saying, I will not be taking on your story as part of mine, because they also made me do that in a not healthy way. As in, like, I had to care about their concerns and their needs just all the time in an exhausting way. And if I didn't anticipate that, then I had a bad time. And it wasn't my fault, but like, they made me feel like it was my fault. So I'm just telling them, no, I don't accept this anymore. So it almost feels like, to go Shakespearean kind of, I'm biting my thumb at them and their love for this anime series that was so important. I'm like, no, not that one. And Madoka Magica was important to both of us, but I'm saying, no, this is mine now, and Gwyn's. So yeah, I may or may not talk more about my album at another time, but I don't think I can talk more about the tracks right now. But I'm trying to think if there's anything else I want to say just about the situation, because it's such a weird feeling of catharsis, which is one of the album tracks. But like, I've been waiting for a long time to say these things, partly because my divorce has been dragging on for reasons that are not entirely in my control. And right now I'm just like, you know what? Yeah, there are things I can't do until I'm fully divorced, but like, I'm ready to move on. I'm not gonna keep... There are things that I haven't wanted to say because I felt vulnerable because I wasn't fully, like, legally severed from my ex. But I did actually go ahead and make a coming out post about the situation and being a DV survivor so that I could let our mutual friends know. Because I was like, yeah, there is some risk associated with this, but I'm going to go ahead and do that. Oh no. The battery's low, so I better end this. But yeah, it's just like, I'm ready to move on. I've written a breakup album, but like I survived the bastards treatment of me album, and which is an immensely difficult thing to have done, especially in a not completely supportive environment and like so soon after. So I'm proud of myself. And, you know, I'm gonna move on. So, before my phone dies, cheers. Thanks for listening to me, and thanks for letting me tell you my side of the story, basically, about this situation, and you just bearing witness. And let's dance again at the next midnight.